Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff.
Welcome to part 13 of our video series highlighting the 1/100th scale Saturn V kit from Estes. In this episode, we'll be applying the decals to our model. I've always felt that this is the point in any project where the model really starts to come alive and echo the vibe of the real thing. Some people seem to struggle with water transfer decals though, so we'll cover the basics and arm you with the skills to make your model a success. Before we begin, I've sprayed the areas on the upper and lower section we just painted with some clear gloss lacquer. This will do two things. First, it will protect the relatively fragile acrylic paint from any potential damage. The lacquer is much tougher. The lacquer will also provide a smooth, glossy surface onto which we'll be able to apply our decals. It is possible to apply water transfer markings over a matte finish, but the possibility of silvering, which is an unsightly hazy look that gives away the paint-like illusion that we hope to achieve, is much higher. Let's review the tools and supplies that we'll need. First, you'll need some scissors to cut the individual decals from the carrier sheet. I prefer a small set of straight scissors, although others swear by the curved variety for this job. Next, we'll need some tweezers, a number 11 blade, and a soft paintbrush, which we'll use to pre-moisten the application area. We'll also need some decal setting solution and more rarely some decal softener. These two things are related but not quite the same thing. The setting solution is a mild acetic acid solution, essentially a refined vinegar, and it serves to lower the surface tension of the application water. In a sense, it makes the water wetter. For 90% plus of the decals we'll be applying to this model, this is all we'll need. The decal softener, on the other hand, is a more aggressive product, and it actually melts the decal slightly, allowing it to conform with surface details. We'll be using this to apply markings to the command module on our model. The colors of the label are a key to their use. The blue bottle is a cooler solution, and the red bottle is much hotter. This is a mild slap, this is a hand grenade. Of course, we'll also need some decal water. I like to add one single drop of dishwashing soap to help lower the surface tension of the water. The water temperature here is right at room temperature. We have our water ready, all of our tools are just off screen, and we have the decal application guide from the instruction manual here with us. Generally speaking, we are going to start at the front end of the model and work our way down, which means we'll begin with the command and service modules. We're going to begin with the service module, and the reason will become clear here in a moment. I want the first decal we apply to be as simple as possible. We've zoomed in just a bit more and we've placed our model part onto a soft towel. Now the first marking we're going to apply are one of the United States and flag markings for the service module. There are 4 United States and flag markings on this small decal sheet. 2 of them, the ones on the left here, have a curved United States on them. These 2 that have the straight United States are the 2 we're interested in for this particular component. I'll use the scissors to cut those out. We're going to trim these down fairly close to the marking. Now, how close is too close? I like to leave about a 1/16 to a 32nd of an inch, call it 2 to 3 millimeters around the marking. Now we're going to apply this at the upper edge of the service module, that's the end with the RCS quads, centered between the RCS quads, but then just a hint to the right. In other words, center and then a step to the right. That's based on a little bit of research that I've done off screen. I'll drop that into the water. While that takes a bath, we'll take some of our setting solution, that's the blue bottle, and put a small puddle of it right on our location for application. We'll go ahead and pull the marking out of the water. Set that on the model, and then with the tip of our finger, just tease it off of the backing paper. I then like to use a number 11 blade to refine the position. Again, we're going to the center and then just a little bit to the right. We'll use the corner of a tissue to wick away some of the excess moisture. We'll double check our positioning, and then we'll let that dry. Now it will take hours for all of the moisture to evaporate from this marking, but after a few minutes we can go ahead and apply the next marking. While we do that though, we've got to take great care not to disturb the positioning on this one. We'll apply more setting solution to the location and then chase this around with our decals. Ooh, it was easy that time. Again, just below the top edge and just off to right of center. Just as an FYI, the service module on the Estes model is highly simplified. The real service module was a very complex bit of equipment. And just as a fun fact, there are probably more markings on just the service module than there are on the entire Saturn V booster. Okay, those two markings have been applied 180 degrees out of phase with each other. We'll let that dry until tomorrow. Let's turn our attention to the pointy end of our model, the command module and launch escape system. Now the kit provides two United States and flag markings to go on opposite sides of this element. Interesting fact though is that none of the manned Saturn V missions actually featured this marking on the command module. So the question becomes, do we want to put this on here? In my case, yes I do, and the reason for that is that I want to honor the legacy vibe of the original Estes kit, which did have these markings. So we're going to apply that. Our next challenge becomes the fact that this side of the model has a raised detail on it. And we need that decal to lay smoothly over that detail. So how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to use our microsol solvent to do that. We'll start by trimming the decals, just like we did the markings we put on the service module. Next, we'll drop one of these into the water and set the other one safely out of the way. We'll apply some micro set, that's the blue bottle, onto the location where the marking will go. And then we'll chase down this marking. And just like before, we'll tease it off of the backing paper. We'll do this roughly centered on the command module, directly below the leg of the launch escape system. The decal is currently going over that raised detail on the command module. So what we're going to do now is bring in our solvent, that's the red bottle, and moisten the top of the decal. We've got a few moments to refine the positioning. And then we'll just leave it alone and let the solvent do its work. The solvent has had the opportunity to work overnight, and this marking looks fantastic. It's completely conformed with this rib detail on the boost protective cover. It really does look like paint, which is the effect we're going for. I'll bring in a handheld camera. This is a little shaky, I apologize for that, but you can really see how the marking has conformed with that detail. That's the effect we're going for. We can now turn our attention to the other side of the boost protective cover on the command module. and install the other curved lettering United States marking. Again, we'll go in line with the leg of the launch escape system tower. There's no detail in the way on this side, so we won't need the solvent. That placement looks good. We'll let that dry. And with that, all of our markings are in place on the service module and command module and launch escape system. We'll set these aside for final assembly. We're now moving down the Saturn V to the interstage between the second stage and the third stage. There are 4 markings on here we need to install. These are called sway motion camera markings. There are 2 white that will be applied on the black quadrants and 2 black that will be applied on the white quadrants. We'll trim the individual markings. It is possible to install these wrong. Notice the orientation here. These will each be installed over the retro rocket motor housings just below the top of the corrugations in each quadrant. We're applying some setting solution here. That's the blue bottle. In order to get these markings to conform with the corrugations, we'll need to add some solvent. Okay, I'm satisfied with that placement. We'll let that sit for a while. Our first sway motion camera target has conformed beautifully over the corrugations, and we'll go ahead and do the other 3. At this point, we're going to move very quickly. As far as I'm concerned, tutorial time is over. Okay, all 4 of these targets are in place. We'll let these dry and conform and then move on. Let's discuss these camera target markings, which the kit instructions tell us to apply up here at the forward end of the second stage. Now, it turns out that these markings only appeared on the 500F facilities verification vehicle, which never flew, and the SA-501 booster, which flew the unmanned Apollo 4 test. The targets never appeared on any later Saturn V, including SA-506, which was the Apollo 11 booster that we're aiming for here. So we're not going to use those. Instead, we're going to slide down to the second stage next. We've trimmed the 4 vertical United States markings, and these are going to be applied on the second stage, centered above the black fields in this roll pattern. They'll extend from just below the upper corrugation down, and we'll make a step up onto the wrap here. Where it makes this step up onto the wrap, we're going to apply some of the microsol solvent. That's the red bottle. We'll drop the first decal into the water and then apply some setting solution to the area where the decal will be applied. That's the blue bottle. I'm going to check this alignment with a ruler. It's very close, but not quite there yet. I can see that this needs to move over just a hair. I'm pleased with this alignment. I'm going to add some microsol to our S. And I'll let that sit for a while. Let's do our next marking. We'll drop the decal into the water, apply the setting solution, that's the blue bottle. As this footage flashes by, I'll mention that we're letting the decals spend about 30 seconds in the water. Any less than that and it won't release from the backing paper. Too much longer than that and the adhesive might dilute. Also, note how I'm double and triple checking alignment. Get a decal straight and nobody notices. Get one crooked and everyone will catch that. We'll do the other two vertical United States decals off camera. We have one more marking to apply onto our second stage. This is called the first motion target or the vertical motion target. And it will be applied on the side of our second stage to the right of the long cable raceway. Here's our long cable raceway. We're going to come over here and directly in line with this paint demarcation between the white and the black is where this will be applied. It'll go right here. Now the second segment in this target, first segment, second segment, the top edge of it will be in line with the top edge of the N in United States. So that's where this marking is going to go. We'll drop it into the water. I'm very satisfied with that alignment. Note that this final segment just barely goes up onto the corrugation. So I will add a little bit of microsol at that point, again, red bottle, and let that rest. We'll move from the second stage to the first stage where we are going to install these US flag markings in line with the white sections of the two roll patterns. The flag will be installed midway between the bottom of this interstage wrap and the top of this interstage wrap. Now, how do we define this line? Here I have a sheet of legal-sized paper, and what I'm going to do is cut a strip of it out. And I'll use a wavy line on that so I know clearly which side is the straight side and which side is not straight. We'll wrap this around the airframe tube. I'll line up the straight edge and tape that so that we can rotate it around the tube and then up and down a bit. Next, we're going to figure out where our flag needs to go. And I'll do that by measuring from the top of the flag to the bottom of the upper interstage wrap. It's about 56 millimeters. That's about 65, so we'll need to lower that a bit. This is an iterative process. You're just going to need to move the flag around until you find the sweet spot. And there's a good placement for our flag. I'm going to slide this ring up to the flag, and that will define the lower edge of the flag all the way around the tube. I'll put a piece of Tamiya tape on there so that the ring does not move, and we'll begin installing our markings. To help us out as we install the flag markings, we'll add some tick marks to the paper strip in line with the paint demarcation lines on the roll patterns. Our alignment strip is in place, the tick marks are on that, our water is at the ready, and our decals have been cut out. So let's get started. First decal goes in the water. Next we'll apply some micro set to the area where the decal will go. This is a smooth, glossy surface, so it shouldn't require any of the solvent solution, just the setting solution. And with that, all 4 of our flag decals are in place. The interesting thing here was that the setup for application actually took longer than putting the decals on themselves, but they look fantastic. We'll let this dry and then be able to remove our guide strip. Our flag markings have dried, so we'll go ahead and remove the guide paper we put in place. Next, we can turn our attention down here to the thrust structure. This is where our USA markings will be installed. They'll be centered in the white field of the roll pattern and also centered above the thrust structure wrap, but below the intertank wrap. If we measure the gap at the bottom, that appears to be about 4 millimeters. So what I'm going to do is create a strip of 4 millimeter wide tape and put that at the base of each of the 4 white areas. So I have a strip of 18 millimeter wide tape here, and what I am going to do is make sure we get a verified straight edge on one side. And then I'm going to measure 4 millimeters from that edge. And there we have a 4 millimeter wide piece of tape. I'll cut that up into usable bits. We'll bring our model back in and place these 4 millimeter wide strips of tape just above the thrust structure wrap. That will give us a good spacing for applying this decal. Our decal water is just off screen. All of our decals are cut, and we can go ahead and begin applying them. We'll apply some of the blue micro set. The first one of these markings is in place. We'll do the other 3 off camera. The USA markings have had some time to dry, and we've pulled up the guide tape that was in place. Our next task will be to install what are called the position markers. These go at the base of the first stage, just above the thrust structure, right on the demarcation line between the white and the black. This particular side of the Saturn V with the long cable raceways on both the first and second stages is where the number 1, or Roman numeral 1, will be installed. I've zoomed out a bit so we can get a really good picture of where these are going to go. Our first position marker, the Roman numeral 1, again will go on the side of the rocket with the long cable raceway on the first stage and this additional long cable raceway on the second stage. We'll drop it in the water, add some of our blue micro set to the area where it will be located. Our positioning on this, we want the bottom of the marking to be in line with the bottom of the A in USA. Again, this goes right on that paint demarcation. We'll go ahead and install the other 3 and then review the placement. All 4 of our position markers are in place, and I want to review the placement before we go any further. Again, number 1 is on the side with 2 long cable raceways on the first and second stages. We'll rotate it 90 degrees to position number 2. This is the side with the access areas. It's also the side with the first motion marking. We'll rotate it 90 more degrees. This is position number 3. This is the side with the single long cable raceway only on the first stage. 90 more degrees. Position number 4. This is perhaps the simplest, cleanest side of the model. We are on the home stretch now, almost done with installing all of these markings. The last thing we need to do are to install the fin markings. Now our position markers that we just installed provide a hint as to where these need to go. Position number 1, if we go to the right, that's where the A fin is. Position number 2, to the right, the B fin. Position number 3, to the right, is the C fin. And predictably, position number 4, to the right, the D fin. Now I've trimmed the fin markings as close as I can to the borders without cutting into that black line. That's because these are going to be installed very close to the leading edge of each fin. We're going to begin at position number 1. I've got all my tools and the decal water just off screen. Again, this is the A fin, this is the D fin. We'll put a D there and an A here. We'll start with the D. This is going to go just above this spar line break in the surface of the fin. There's an almost imperceptible change in the surface of the fin right along here. The bottom edge will go along that line, and the top will almost touch the leading edge, but not quite. I'm going to set this straight edge up, and that is not quite straight. I'm just laying the straight edge along the body tube and then sighting along the top of it. That looks good. Let's do the A side now. I'm going to rotate the model 180 degrees. I'm going to do a quick sight here to make sure that they look roughly symmetrical, and they do. That's a good installation right there. We'll move to position 2 for the installation of an A and a B. We'll start with the A. We're now at position 3. This will be a B and a C. And now we are at position 4, where we are going to install the C and D markings. And with that, we are at a major milestone. All of our decal markings are in place on the model. Or, if you're one of our European friends, all of our Decal markings are in place. In our next episode, the final episode, we'll be bringing everything together and finishing the model. Thanks for watching.